Hello, everybody. My name is Hastur, and before we start, I would like to apologize. I am trying to kick my cough, but unfortunately, my cough is kicking me. And as you might have noticed, this is another video by Jaxxom. If you want to, here's the link if you want to watch the video yourself. But before you get into this, don't view brigade. View brigading is cringe. It is poopy, stinky, and no one likes it. So don't do that. If you want to watch, go ahead and watch, but I didn't send you there to watch. So behave yourself. With all that being said, before we start, this actually is a response to his previous video, which I made a video on. I saw this when I got home from work, and I thought I was initially going to make a video on what do words mean that he also made, which I will be making a video on, but not yet. But I saw this and I thought, damn, that's like brand spanking new. So here I am. Basically, the lead up to this, the reason why it says 154 is he's addressing the fact that he accidentally used a sorry instead of leaflet for his thumbnail, and that he like fixed it. Which, in all fairness, I don't blame him for that. Their models are fairly similar, and if I didn't know any better, I would get them confused. So, like, I'm not going to hold that against him. It's a silly little oopsie daisy, big whoop. But I watched this video because I tried to record it, and then I realized that my mic was fucking muted. So absolutely no audio. Yippee. But without further ado, enough of my bullshitting. Let me go ahead and let him speak a little bit.
Something I want to respond to completely seriously with no joking or anything like that. I have not and would never call for any of you to be attacked or physically harmed in any way. And this country, if they did, they wouldn't be voting for this shit. They should never be able to live normal lives in a civilized society ever again. We're not gonna get our normal country back until we get these parasitic scum to fuck off forever. I guess that pretty much.
So, tisk tisk, that is wrong, but I'm winning by I'm winning by definition here. I'm being nitpicky. So let's just let him speak.
And I also never called you Nazis or fascists, or even implied that you were.
You definitely implied it. I did double check. He did not say directly in the transcript, from what I could find, that they were, in fact, Nazis or fascists. But yeah, you implied it, buddy. But I get off topic.
I think you know all of that. I think you might be intentionally framing it as though I'm calling for that to rile up a response against me, which I think is pretty disgusting and irresponsible. But if they did, they wouldn't be voting for this shit. They should never be able to live normal lives in a civilized society ever again. We're not gonna get our normal country back.
For shame, for shame. For shame.
But I just wanted to make that clear. If you have a problem with my hat, just Google Woody Guthrie. He famously wrote this slogan on his guitar to represent the idea that art could fight back against the rise of fascism. If you have a...
Okay, so here's the issue with that. Here's the issue with that argument. And the issue is, and funnily enough, he actually says something similar to this. What I'm going to use as my basis of logic. He says in his What Do Words Mean video that words have a certain level of ambiguity, no matter what you use. But then there is connotation and denotation. That's supposed to be an N. Yeah, so there's denotation, then there's connotation. So denotation is the literal meaning of a word, like right in the dictionary. That's what it means. Connotation is like closer to slang, like what does it mean in context of the statement. And then there is a general line that these can follow, and then with this axis being ambiguity. So most people, when they see god damn it, an article of clothing, by all connotation, that most people know, when it says this guy, like whether it be the shirt says this guy or this machine or my body, like if it's a my body turns time into wasted time shirt, like people obviously understand that it's in reference to the person wearing it, not necessarily like the body of the shirt. The argument that he put it on his guitar because it's a statement on how art is anti-fascist. Well, people don't have that like context. I would love to know how many people know the quote, "This machine kills fascists," in reference to the guitar, because I can guarantee that most people would know the "This machine kills fascists" in reference to you, because you are wearing a hat that says it. And with all other forms of clothing that have something similar written, it is in reference to the person. So I know that this is a little bit of a non sequitur, because this isn't the video where he talks about that, but he has talked about it. So I'm going to use his own logic against him, because it is for the best that I do.
Problem with this video. Take it up with Dan Harmon. That's his rant. Yes, the community guy. Yes, the Rick and Morty guy. I just thought his rant went pretty hard. In an ideal.
But did he upload that? Did he upload that video to your channel? No, you uploaded that video to your channel. I understand you might have thought it went pretty hard, but there are plenty of speeches that go pretty hard, and I can guarantee you that you probably wouldn't put a lot of those on your channel, unless, of course, you agreed with it.
World, anyone actually goose-stepping down Main Street waving swastika flags would probably be tried for treason, but I don't act went pretty hard. In an ideal world, anyone actually goose-stepping down Main Street waving swastika flags would probably be tried for treason, but
that is a terrible world, because anyone who opposes you or anyone who is exercising their freedom of speech is going to be punished. That is absolutely terrible. With that argument, okay, you're goose stepping down with swastikas, which Nazism isn't ideology. It's a terrible one, but it's an ideology. Well, okay, what if I change ideology to support of a country? I mean, support is an ideology. So if it's Mexican pride or Canadian pride or free Palestine or support Ukraine, Slava Ukraini. Why did I say Ukraine? But the idea that, oh, well, if you're goose stepping down in a perfect world, if you're goose stepping down and you're supporting Nazis, you'd be tried for treason. Well, with that argument, if I support anything that isn't American, like, you know, brass tacks, ooh, freedom loving, bomb shooting, gun toting, you know, American as apple pie and baseball, can I be tried for treason that way? If I, you know, support pear pie instead of apple pie, if I prefer football instead of baseball, it's a stupid argument. That's a stupid statement.
I don't actually think any of you are.
Is that ad hominem? Is that an ad hominem? A little bit. Am I wrong? No.
Or that kind of person, and I never said you were. I don't think I even implied that you were.
You implied that they were.
It's frustrating when people like you and a lot of the people in my comments will say things like, oh, come on, man, how come you hate me for my words and my politics? It's just speech, bro. Like, it's not real. Because none of the negative consequences of your votes affect you. You aren't getting.
How do you know that? Like, how do you know that none of those affect them? Because you don't. You are jumping to a conclusion, and you don't know that they don't affect them, but you're going to straw man after coming up magically with some idea in your head that it doesn't affect them. specifically, let me pull it up just to make sure that I'm quoting the right one. No, not anchoring. No, not sunk cost. Yeah. No, not availability. But you're effectively, you're jumping to a conclusion. You are believing what you want to believe because it's the easiest. Hold on. Oh, itchy. Because it is the easiest thing to immediately argue. It's piss poor, for shame. But I ramble.
Getting kidnapped by masked federal agents on the way to work because of the color of your skin or your accent, even though you're a citizen. You aren't having
Emotional terms for one with kidnapping. For two, name one U.S. citizen who has been kidnapped and deported illegally by ICE, or any one for that matter, when they were completely legal. I will wait. I will personally go anywhere you want and do something silly as long as it's not doxing. All right? As simple as that.
your access to doctor-prescribed medication taken away from you because of religious nutjobs who want to.
Imagine having your rights usurped by government officials who said, I don't like these things. Like, the ATF does on basically a daily basis. Mm-hmm. If you don't believe me, what's the case? It is, if my memory serves, which it's fucking not. Damn it. Don't you hate it when you know the word and now you can't think of it? But basically, the ATF has the authority to make effectively laws because they were given the power by Congress. They can just flat out say, well, by us being the ATF of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, we are the preeminent source in what is and is not legal for firearms. And we can just, bypass Congress. So you want to talk about religion, a lot of people were ideologically motivated to get rid of guns that were commonplace until I believe it was the Bruin decision that said, hey, you got to go by what the founding fathers had available to them and like their logic. But even then, you have a bunch of judges who are just not doing that, who are preventing the enforcement of new law. Well, actually, they aren't laws, but new rulings by the ATF. It's going to drive me nuts. If I can remember what it's called, maybe I'll put it in the comments section. If you can remember what it's called, put it in the comments section. But I get off topic. Yeah. Religious ideologues preventing you from doing something.
To impose their morality on this entire country. You didn't lose your job because of tariffs that are wreaking havoc on our economy for no good reason. You aren't.
How do you know that? You don't know that. You're jumping to a conclusion when you don't have any evidence. And you're spellcasting at this point. As much as the slogan, as much as I don't like using slogans, you're spellcasting.
Aren't a child who will suffer from a preventable disease as a result of Robert F. Kennedy's undermining of vaccinations and the entirety of our healthcare system.
Like measles or polio? Two diseases that we completely eradicated from the United States up until about when we really started upping the illegal immigration because we weren't vetting the people who were coming over's health. If they had measles, if they had polio, if they had a shit ton of other things. Like Hep A. We can basically prevent hepatitis A. Like, I'm pretty sure we have a vaccine for it. But no. That's getting off topic. My point is, you're being snippety. And in your previous video, and I know this is non sequitur, but in the previous video, it doesn't take much to say fuck ICE. Fuck ICE, that's based. Well, ICE is the people who are enforcing who are enforcing immigration law that, if was properly enforced in the first place, we wouldn't have the measles epidemic that we are currently facing. We wouldn't have the small bouts of polio here and there affecting Americans. Few and far between, but they are affecting us. But, oh yeah, Robert F. Kennedy's the problem, not the people who allowed all the people over the border.
Assume your parents probably vaccinated you. You aren't dying in a hospital bed in Texas because the doctors are too afraid of being prosecuted for removing your non-viable fetus that is literally killing you.
That is a matter of the doctors being cowards. And if they are sued, I would love anyone to point to a genuine situation like what he's describing, because he's strawmanning. He doesn't have one like that. I know he doesn't. Well, I shouldn't say I know. I could bet I would bet smacking my right hand on concrete full force 3 times in a row before he would have any sort of actual evidence for his claim. And in fact, it's kind of funny because over the past 24 years, rather over the period of 24 years from 6 reporting states, only 1.14% of abortions were performed for the mother's life or physical health. So that is a very, very small minority, but we're going to appeal to it because, we can appeal to a tiny, tiny little thing in order to elicit an emotional response. But I'm rambling. I'm getting pissed off. Long story short, he's trying to get you heated because it's easier to deal with an emotional argument because he is spellcasting. He isn't trying to make an argument. He is trying to elicit a reaction out of you through emotion. That way you don't question what he's saying. He is a poopy, stinky, little argumentative, cute little twink boy.
And you aren't laying somewhere in a bed dying because USAID used to pay for your treatment until Elon Musk decided.
USAID, United States Assistant of International Development. USAID. You know what that means? It means your Medicare shouldn't have been paid for by USAID. It should have been paid for by Medicaid or Medicare. The fact that USAID money was going towards your medical bills in the first place is a problem. And I understand, well, what about... Whoa. That was weird. Oh, whoops. Stop that. And I understand that, there are the cases of people over in foreign countries who did, in fact, benefit from that money. And I do feel bad for them. But you're making the argument that, oh, you don't have to live with it. Well, motherfucker, we have plenty of other things. And the issue with USAID was that there was a vast amount of very questionable money that was being used. For instance, one of the most infamous ones was the Sesame Street one. I think it was Iranian. It might have been Iraqi or Saudi Arabian. I don't remember which one. It was one of the sand dune countries. It's not the one I'm looking for. USAID. Oh, it was Iraq, not Iran. Okay, yeah. Explain to me why we need $20 million to Sesame Workshop between 2021 and 2020. What the fuck? Well, I'll be damned. They got all the money that they wanted. Fine. Oh, no. It was over the course of that. So they already got 11 million and we saved 9. But you're telling me that... Oh, here. Let's not straw man. I understand that some people probably did benefit. But explain to me why we needed USAID to fund Sesame Street in Iraq. Why did we need to fund transgender surgeries in Uganda? And no, I can't spell worth a shit. Oh, right. You mean gender affirming surgeries in Uganda? Sure. But I get what you're saying. I get what he's trying to say. Emotional term, pull at heartstring, emotional term.
Decided to take a break from begging Epstein for an invite to his pedo island to kill that program, dooming thousands of people to death, not losing an energy drink sponsor, not just getting called mean names, not people on the internet being nasty to you, death because of this.
Okay, I'll raise you one question. What did Rev's wife do? Because Rev wasn't the only one that was affected by, I fucking ranted on it in my last video, and I'm going to keep this short. But Rev wasn't the only one affected by fucking, oh, what's it called? Advanced. I keep wanting to say gamer subs, and I know it's not gamer subs. It's advanced GG. Now, you can make the argument that, okay, Rev being kicked, nail in the coffin, final straw, sure. What did his wife do? His wife didn't do anything from what I've seen. So the argument that, oh, it's this thing over here is far greater, which this is a stupid fucking argument that you're saying, oh, this doesn't matter because of this. Is whataboutism? It's a stupid argument. Because by your argument, innocent people are affected by decisions. And decisions made by Rev with the things that he said, which, fair enough, resulted in him being terminated. You can make that argument. I don't agree with his termination. I think it was a pussy's move. But by your argument, and maybe I'm strawmanning, maybe I'm not understanding completely, but innocent people being affected is bad, yes. So Rev's wife being affected is also bad. But I have a sneaking suspicion that he wouldn't say that. Call it a reasonable judgment. But I rant, I rave, I'm losing my mind.
Disgusting pedo ghoul that you all spend day after day shilling for because a trans girl won a sport one.
We don't shill for him because a trans girl won a sports once. Which, that's a fucking straw man. But two, I would love to see where in the Epstein files Trump was shown undeniably out of the 3,000 plus references, which one of those indicated that he was in fact undeniably a pedophile. Newsflash, none of them do. It would be all over the mainstream fucking media. But it's not. The fact that it isn't on there is a great indicator that he didn't do anything.
This isn't the type of response video where I'm going to sit here watching all their videos, going through everything point by point. I just want to hit on
Coward.
one
I'm joking.
big topic because I think it's at the core of our disagreement over ICE's recent activities.
The reason there's so many ICE agents in Minneapolis is because the police refused to help them, and they needed backup from more ICE agents in order to protect the ICE agents that were doing the arrests. So in Texas and Florida, the actual state of Texas, the actual state of Florida, and the local police are actually helping. They're helping with the crime aspect, the protest aspect. So they don't have to worry about that. They don't need as many people.
This idea that they are
Okay. I mean, that is just factually true. I went over it in the previous video that Texas and, yes, Florida, I don't think I showed Florida, but Texas and Florida are having like assistance via the local government, or correction, the ICE agents in Texas and Florida are getting assistance via the local government, local cops. And that's not happening in Minnesota, which is part of the reason, yes, why there are so many more agents there. That is true.
They're conducting, in the words of the DHS, the largest immigration enforcement operation in Minnesota simply because they have illegal immigrants and the state doesn't cooperate with them is a lie. And it's not even a very good lie. The White House has openly...
Victory by definition, he is specifically stating that it is only because of these two things, when he is going to then, in a moment, say that there's actually this third thing. Be honest here.
He stated that this operation was about fraud.
Okay, so it's about three things. After he just said it was a lie because he's only using the two at the start. And then after he calls it a lie, he says, oh wait, but there's this third one. It's disingenuous. It's disgusting.
There's a timeline for those of you who are not aware. December 2nd, Trump said...
Here's a timeline for those who aren't aware. Bam, bam, bam. About there, and about there. All right. So let me whip out my drawing pen. Where did I? There it is. So then 2018, 2020, 22, and now not to scale. In 2018, Tim Walz was elected. Alrighty, and between 2020 and 2022 was the Feeding Our Future. That is a terrible O. Scandal. It was just flat out fraud, but I'll call it a scandal, you know, play into it, make it easier to find. And Tim Walz has been in office from then to now. So I just want to make this little timeline because this is going to be important in a moment.
Says he doesn't want Somalis in the US. This was after he went on social media to allege that Minnesota is a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity.
If you, whoa, whoops. Shit. Oh, there we go. Yeah, which, yeah, because Feeding Our Future took place in Minnesota, specifically Minneapolis. So, oh yeah, the largest Somali community is.
Minnesota is a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity, referring to a recent story ran by a conservative news outlet, City Journal, which claimed that taxpayer dollars from defrauded government programs have flowed to the Somali militant group Al-Shabaab. Also on December 2nd,
there is evidence of that.
Tells Associated Press that federal authorities are preparing a targeted immigration enforcement operation in Minnesota that would primarily focus on Somali immigrants. December 4th, Operation
Whoa. Somali immigrants living unlawfully in the U.S. Wow, you're not going to mention that? I'm not surprised.
December 4th, Operation Metro.
ICE arrests worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens during Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis, including pedophiles, domestic abusers, and gang members. What do you want to bet he's not going to talk about it?
Surge begins in Minnesota.
Oh,
December
wait.
8th.
He doesn't.
Trump has linked his administration's immigration crackdown against Minnesota's large Somali community to his...
Okay. So is this not a good reason? You know, a reason that you might have mentioned that he would have... Oh, wait. No. How did he word it again? How did he word it? That it's...
Minnesota simply because they have illegal immigrants and the state doesn't cooperate with them is a lie. And it's not even a very good lie. The White House has openly stated that this operation was about fraud.
I mean, he can strawman all he wants because that's not what Leaflet was saying with this little quotation out of context.
Here's a timeline for those of you who are not aware. December 2nd. Openly stated that this operation was about fraud.
Okay, so it's about fraud. about fraud. It's about money.
January 2nd, the White House doubles down on the idea that Operation's immigration crackdown against Minnesota's large Somali community to a series of fraud cases involving government programs in which many defendants have roots in the East African country.
Okay.
December 26th, Nick Shirley's fraud video is released and goes viral.
Right.
January 2nd, the White House doubles down on the idea that operations in Minnesota are related to fraud by Somalis. They specifically mention the Nick Shirley video. January 6th,
Okay.
more than 2,000 agents are sent to Minnesota, making Metro Surge the largest operation of its kind in the country. Throughout this entire chain of events, the Trump administration repeatedly linked Metro Surge to Somali fraud in that state. Aside from that, if this operation was just about illegal immigration, then
When did she say that it was only about illegal immigration? She didn't.
why did Pam Bondi pressure them to turn over their voter rolls?
Oh, I can actually answer this. So, funny little thing about Minnesota. Minnesota has this goofy little law called Let me find the exact name for it. The driver's license for all law, which unfortunately, because of how Minnesota's voting laws are, let's see. Let me just pull this over here. So, identification requirements. If your voter registration is current and active, assuming that it's not, if you are registering or updating your registration on election day or have not voted in the past 4 years, you must provide proof of residence. Acceptable proof of residence includes a valid Minnesota's driver's license. Oh, which a photo ID. Well, that's a lot. But it's also worth noting. Maybe you don't trust me. I'm using effectively ChatGPT. But Grand Pinnacle Tribune. Minnesota officials admit non-citizens could vote with state IDs. A 2023 law granting driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants reignites debate over election integrity as officials confirm IDs could be used at the polls. Whoop-de-doo. You want to know why she was asking for voter rolls? It's because of that. Because they can give a bunch of people illegally the ability to vote if you check between legal voters and the people who voted. Voting people, if you have legal voters at, let's do 900,000, just random number, and then you have 1 million people who voted, you can clearly tell that there's a discrepancy and that there's a very, very, very big problem. And then that leads into potential voter fraud, which is important because it's one of the greatest tenets of the American government system, the ability to go out and make your voice heard at the ballot box. And people who are not supposed to be here, who should not have that same voice as the American citizenry does, being able to make a vote and being able to sway an election, that is a very big thing. And the fact that you are saying, oh, I don't understand why, whether that be through sheer ignorance or honest disingenuity, I'm going to attribute to incompetence what I want to contribute to malice. I think you might just not understand that. And I'm going to hope that you are not actually just, ignoring the possibility. Instead of assuming that you're just playing inconceivability, I'm going to hope that you're just dumb.
If ICE's activity is only about illegal immigration, then why did Brian Kilmeade from Fox openly admit that they're winding down a little in Maine to help Senator Susan Collins? These people aren't even bothering to lie about what the reason is, but here you are lying for them.
she didn't say anything about like Maine not cracking down. She was talking about why by what you showed. Maybe you should show more instead of taking quotations out of context. But by what you showed, she was talking about why there are more agents in Minnesota and why when there are far, far more arrests in places like Texas and places like Florida, why they don't have as many people. But you're not showing that. Instead, you're strawmanning. You are effectively lying. In fact, you know what? I'm attributing this part right here to like disingenuity. I think you know that you are lying because this is far beyond just a simple straw man. I genuinely believe that you are lying to me right here, or at least attempting to. Because in that whole clip with Leaflet, right here,
refused to help them, and they needed backup from more ICE agents in order to protect the ICE agents that were doing the arrests. So in Texas and Florida, the actual state of Texas, the actual state of Florida, and the local police are actually helping. They're helping with the crime aspect, the protest aspect. So they don't have to worry about that. They don't need as many people.
This idea.
Yeah, she didn't say anything about the reasoning. She is saying that they needed more people there because the people who were supposed to be helping, the local law enforcement, weren't helping. I don't understand. Maybe I'm getting so worked up because this is the second time I had to record this. But dear God, I don't think you're that stupid. I hope you're not that stupid. I hope you're not that disingenuous either.
People aren't even bothering to lie about what the reason is, but here
it's not a lie. In fact, actually, if anything, Kilmeade's saying, "Oh yeah, we're pulling out because we want her to win."
Is only about illegal immigration. Then why did Brian Kilmeade from Fox?
Leaflet didn't say it was only about illegal immigration. Literally, the entire thing that you just showed with Trump saying, "Hey, there's been fucking fraud here," has literally shown that it isn't exclusively about illegal immigration, that it is also about fraud. And this right here, which you're going to say, well, they're not even bothering to hide their lies anymore. Well, one, this is Brian Kilmeade. This isn't the White House. And two, how is this a fucking, like, them trying to lie for them? If anything, this is like a huge whoopsie daisies. This is a huge, like, cat out of the bag moment. You're looking a gift horse in the mouth right here. You can make a completely different argument, but you're sounding like a dipshit.
Openly admit that they're winding down a little.
Sorry, that one was ad hominem.
In Maine to help Senator Susan Collins. These people aren't even bothering to lie about what the reason is, but here you are lying for them for what? Just the love of the game?
But the reason why people don't like Tim Walz is because all of this fraud happened underneath him. That's why. That's why people are mad at him.
So we know the pretext for this, and everything that happened after it is the Somali fraud scandal. We hate Tim Walz, and we're sending ICE to harass his constituents because the fraud happened on his watch. And
no, we're sending in ICE because there is evidence of illegal immigration and fraud being involved. It's multiple things at once, but no, it's, well, we're using this to harass the constituents.
He must be somehow complicit.
If his main constituency is illegal immigrants, then you can make the argument, yeah, but I don't think that's the argument you're trying to make, because you wouldn't be that stupid.
Except he wasn't. Governor Walz worked through 2025 will push.
Remember how I mentioned that this would be a nifty little mouse tool in a moment? This is what I was talking about.
Pushing new measures to fight fraud in that state.
Oh, wait.
He must be somehow complicit.
How long?
Except
when
he
did
wasn't.
He do it?
Governor Walz worked through 2025 pushing new.
Oh, 2025. 3 years after the Feeding Our Future scandal, the fraud for that was exposed and litigated. And oh wait, it was 2025 when the majority of the people involved were actually charged. In fact, actually, here. Let me pull this up real quick. Let me Yeah, right here. Feeding our future convictions. I don't know why I put an A there. Do. Over 50 convictions. When were they convicted? Oh. As of early 2026, 77 individuals have been charged with dozens still awaiting sentencing. If he put in all of these anti-things, if he was like so proactive, as you're trying to say, as you're trying to imply, why did it take until this year to have apparently even more people still being prosecuted? I know that there were, like right here, these guys, these were charged either 2025 or 2024. Hold on, I can double check. Late 2025. All right. All right, so people were indicted back in 2022. And as of late 2025, 78 suspects indicted in the fraud. All right, 7 were found guilty at trial. Oh, there's a weighted trial. Okay, so long story short, from what I'm seeing here, and now granted this is a very, very, very brief overview, but considering the fact that I'm not seeing anything like before 2025 when it comes to actual like criminal prosecutions, this argument doesn't hold fucking water. Pardon my language.
New measures to fight fraud in that state. The only reason Nick Shirley even knew about the fraud in Minnesota in the first place is because there had been open prosecutions and convictions on these.
Oh, no. Okay, so there are some that were earlier. I thought that was 2025. Alrighty, so jury finds 5 of the 7 defendants guilty in Feeding Our Future trial. I apologize for getting angry. 2 defendants were found not guilty on any of the charges against them. 5 were found guilty on multiple accounts. Okay, so still 2 years after it was dissolved.
These cases since the Biden administration. None.
2 years after Feeding Our Future was dissolved, and 1 year before his anti-fraud things were put into place. The same anti-fraud things that Nick Shirley's video shows isn't doing anything.
Of the businesses featured in Nick Shirley's video have been found to have committed any fraud.
Conducted unannounced visits at the daycares in the viral video over the past 6 months as part of the typical licensing and auditing process, according to Tiki Brown, the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and analysis of publicly available inspection records by the 19th. By the 19th? Why is that capitalized? Found that most of the centers had unannounced inspections as recently as October, November, or December. After the video was posted, investigators from the Office of Inspector General conducted compliance visits to 9 of the 10 centers in the video. One of the centers in the video has been closed for several years and has not received funds in that time. Then why was it in the video? I don't think he would have just went there, considering the fact that it was funding rolls that he used. He found public documentation showing funding. That is how he found those buildings. So anyway, one of the centers in the video has been closed for several years and has not received funds in that time. They found normal operations and children at all but one, which had not yet opened for the day. Further investigations are being conducted into 4 of the 9 facilities, but the state has not said what exactly it's investigating. Okay, so they are investigating. And in Nick Shirley's video, during the time of operations, when he went there, there were no kids. There was no evidence of kids. So you're making let me try to understand the argument here. This guy is saying that there haven't been any indictments, like there hasn't been any criminal prosecution, right? How did he word it?
Prosecutions and convictions on these cases since the Biden administration. None of the businesses featured in Nick Shirley's video have been found to have committed any fraud, but...
Okay, have been found who have committed any fraud. there is evidence that they have, considering what is shown in Nick Shirley's video. There is relatively decent evidence in Nick Shirley's video. But I understand what you're doing here. Victory by definition, because they haven't been indicted and because the government hasn't officially said anything, technically there's no fraud because the government has said nothing on it. Sure. I'll give you that. It's a stupid point, but I'll give it to you.
Okay, still, the fraud happened on Tim's watch. It still is a responsibility, so...
Actually, it happened well into Tim's watch. In fact, the entirety of the fraud occurred under Tim's watch. And it has continued to occur under Tim's watch.
Hating Tim Walz is still valid. Okay, sure. By the way, what's Donald Trump's record on fraud? The Small Business Administration Office of Inspector General estimates that over $200 billion in potentially fraudulent economic injury disaster loans and payment protection program funds were dispersed. SBA officials have noted that 86% of this likely fraud occurred in the first 9 months of the pandemic under the Trump administration.
All right, fair criticism. I'll give it to him. Yeah, that is a fair criticism. The difference is, during that time, what way was there to properly vet? Like, what was happening with the business? Because at the time, there wasn't. And well after that, I tried to find it again, but I couldn't quite find it. I saw the number. After, they started clawing back the money that was improperly allocated, that 70% right there. I want to say the number I saw was 283 billion was reclaimed. Or recollected, might have been the proper word. But at the time, and a little bit of defense here, but at the time, there wasn't much in the ways of properly vetting who was who. And for the Feeding Our Future scandal, it's still this? Well, actually, no, Feeding Our Future was separate. It was a separate thing. But Small Business Association, I don't want to rationalize because, once again, this is a fair criticism. I don't like that. But we reclaimed the money. Now, I'm not saying that completely absolves it. It doesn't. But equally, when he is leaving, and it was into 2021, 2022 when we started reclaiming the money, he didn't have the opportunity to reclaim it. If Tim Walz went out and was like, hey, we reclaimed a bunch of the money, whoopsie daisies, yeah, that would be something. I would give that to Tim Walz. But he hasn't. At least not to what I've seen. And with this, yeah, fair criticism.
COVID fraud is considered to be possibly the largest fraud scandal in American history. And 86...
Because there was, zero oversight at the time. All credit to Biden. He put in a lot of stuff in order to prevent future fraud. I'll give that to him. Trump didn't implement that in time. And that allowed a huge portion of the money, what did it say, 17%? To be fraudulently used.
6% of it occurred on Trump's watch. Changpeng Zhao, CEO of Binance,
Here, let me pull up some of my own names. Let me go with... yeah, here.
pled guilty to U.S. anti-money laundering violations.
Actually, yeah, here, let's...
Pardoned by Trump. Todd and Julie Chrisley, convicted of bank fraud, tax evasion.
All right. Merdad Ansari, Western District of Texas. Conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act and the Iranian Transaction Regulations, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, making use of false writing, and aiding and abetting. 2 counts. Granted clemency by Biden.
And wire fraud, pardoned by Trump.
Vladislav collusion, conspiracy to obtain here, I'll show you. Here you go. Yep. Vladislav collusion, District of Massachusetts, 9 years imprisonment, $2.5-ish million. Restitution as amended. And the offense of conspiracy to obtain unauthorized access to computer and to commit wire fraud and securities fraud, wire fraud, unauthorized access to computers, securities fraud. And was granted clemency by Biden.
Devin Archer, convicted of defrauding a Native American tribe of $60 million, pardoned by Trump.
Zero defense. Scumbag. I'm not going to defend that one. Or even, like, retort.
Trevor Milton, CEO
It's not really defense. It's, oh, I have stuff from your guy.
of Nikola, convicted of securities and wire fraud regarding lying to his investors, pardoned by Trump.
Roman Seleznev, conspiracy to commit bank fraud, participation in a racketeer influence corrupt corporation, wire fraud, 10 counts, intentional damage to a computer, 8 counts, obtaining information from a protected computer, 9 counts, access device fraud, counts, aggravated identity theft, 2 counts.
Joseph Lewis, insider trading, pardoned by Trump. David Gentile, $1.6 billion Ponzi scheme, sentence commuted by Trump. Adriana Camberos.
Hold on, let me make sure that I can read this guy completely. Ronald Mikos, mail fraud, 14 counts, healthcare fraud, 5 counts, obstruction of proceedings, influencing a grand jury, tampering with a witness, 3 counts, murder of a witness.
Convicted of conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud for a $49 million counterfeit 5-hour energy scheme, pardoned by Trump twice. Mark Rossini.
Now, is that twice like this right here? Or is it just, like, is it 2 counts, or is it she did something once and then she did it again? I would like to know. I don't know.
Conspiracy to violate the Federal Election Campaign Act by bribing the Puerto Rican governor, pardoned by Trump. George
Conspiracy to commit economic espionage. Conspiracy, Yajin Zhu, conspiracy to commit economic espionage. Conspiracy to commit trade secret theft. Attempted economic espionage by theft or fraud. Attempted theft or theft of trade secrets by taking or deception.
Santos admitted to wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, making false statements to the FEC, and fraudulent unemployment claims. Sentence commuted by Trump.
Ji Chaoqin, conspiracy to defraud the United States, impersonating agents of foreign governments, statements or entries. I don't know. Shanlin Jin, possession of child pornography, commuted by Biden.
Trump coin, scamming his supporters with a crypto rug pull. Trump phone, took people's money and promised made in America phones, and all they've delivered are refurbished iPhones and Samsung phones. Trump's net worth has increased by over $3 billion since he became president. Not to mention the plot to steal the 2020 election by forging 7 slates of fraudulent electors and attempting to have them cast their vote.
Did he draft those himself? I know that this is a little bit of a victory by definition, but if he didn't draft them himself, if that was someone else who tried to do it, it's not him.
Votes for him in states where he lost. So when you and anyone else tell me that the reason you hate Tim Walz is because of the fraud, meanwhile, there doesn't seem to be a peep out of any of you for this Trump stuff, it's so incredible.
2 different situations. For one, like, you can pull up a bunch of other shit if you want, but it's not the same. One is intentionally ignoring countless millions of dollars of fraud. Billions. We are into billions territory here. There's evidence that he knew the person who was in charge of the Feeding Our Future. Ilhan Omar took photos with some of the chefs involved with running the Feeding Our Future scam. There's evidence of this, and I know Ilhan Omar is kind of non sequitur, but Tim Walz has had evidence that there is evidence that shows Tim Walz has had acquaintances, relations to the people who were in charge of the fraud. Considering the fact that his voter base, which is mostly Somalis, seems to really, really like him, and considering it was the Somali community which had the majority of the fraud, or rather, correction, the majority of the fraudsters were Somali. Yeah, this is two very different things. Like, Trump, as the president, can commute who he wants, as much as I might disagree with it. Tim Walz has the obligation to prevent any and all fraud that he can. Trump was out of office by the time that a lot of the fraud was uncovered. He couldn't prevent it. At least any better than what eventually Biden did. Biden stopped a lot of it. Good on him. Trump was out of office. He couldn't stop it.
Incredibly frustrating. It makes me want to tear my fucking skin off.
I won't stop you.
There is
Swan out. Swan out.
one thing that Leaflet said that I do, unfortunately, find myself agreeing with quite often.
Why is it unfortunate?
I don't know how you live in the same country like that. You know, like I think it's so obvious to me now that there really is such a cultural divide. There really is such a great cultural divide now that it almost feels like being a part of the same country is just impossible.
You know, it's pretty funny that
Oh boy. January 6th.
a response I keep getting over and over to this previous video is, "Stop complaining, people voted for this," which is insane to me because most of you can't even accept the results of the 2020 election when it was
When Pennsylvania changed its rules for, like, voting, when Minnesota, which already had lax laws when it came to voting, they weren't nearly as problematic as they are now. But when Minnesota is lax, when states like California give out IDs, when those IDs are then permitted to be used to vote, even in state elections, it is very, very concerning when eventually it gets to the national level. And it's within reason to say, hey, is this all above board? Newsflash, with more and more evidence that we uncover, it wasn't. There's been evidence, and we are currently finding more and more, that there was fraudulent voters, and you can watch. I know for a fact that Steven Crowder had a video where he actually went out and he double-checked some of the locations that were just fraudulent. Like, an empty lot was considered a house during someone's, like, voter registration. And when he checked in with, like, the state clerk, it was either the district or the state clerk as to, like, what would happen if fraudulent voting was discovered. The state clerk said, oh yeah, nothing can be done. Whoop-de-doo. That's why people are complaining that, like, oh, this we don't accept this because there's so much shit going on that it's kind of hard to.
was investigated and litigated more than any other election in modern US history. So yeah, you have a point.
Just because it was litigated and just because it was investigated a bunch doesn't mean that there isn't a reason to question it. Because there has been vast amounts of evidence that shows that it was very questionable. And more comes out every day. So just saying, oh, you can't accept it. So, sorry, let me not strawman. Let me use his own words.
Which is insane to me because most of you can't even accept the results of the 2020 election when it was investigated and litigated more than any other election in modern US history. So yeah, you have a point. I often find myself wondering how I am supposed to just act normal and go on with my life in this country with people.
With people who, what, can't accept an election because there's reasonable questions to ask?
People who support this awful administration and its unprecedented assault on our democracy and are
like what?
This detached from reality. I really hope you all snap out of it pretty soon. Because believe it or not, I actually have too much to live for to die in some bullshit civil war because you people can't bring yourself to stop supporting this awful piece of shit. So, when I first wrote the script for this,
So, in the end, he basically, well, here, I'll let him finish.
video, I will admit, it had a lot more swearing and a lot more name calling in it. But one of my friends told me about something Hank Green said, and that made me reconsider, and I ended up rewriting it. It would take a lot to convince me that the problem with America is that we're not angry enough. And the truth is, pretty soon after posting the video that started all this, I did regret how it turned out. It was sloppy, it wasn't very entertaining, and if there was a case to be made, I did not present it well. I mostly just used this Twitter situation as an excuse to vent my anger and frustration about current events and politics. I honestly thought no one would really see it. My channel is super dead. I basically just use it as a creative outlet now. I'm not even monetizing these videos. Look, I do think these people are awful and wrong and are supporting incredibly disgusting behavior from this administration, but it's not really productive or fair for me to make them the targets of all of my frustration, and it's not fair for me to direct all of my anger and frustration at Leaflet in this video just because she ended up responding to me. You're welcome for the content, by the way. 2 1-hour-long videos so far, with a third on the way. Again, awful politics, probably an awful person, but still a person.
So you don't know if she's a good person or not, but you're going to assume that she's an awful person. Listen. I'm going to, yeah, here, let me go big model real quick. This is going to affect the video. There we go. Listen. The issue with people like Jaxxom, I don't mean those people. Oh, I don't mean those people. I mean people who strawman, people who use selective instances, people who are disingenuous on a variety of subjects, topics, how they present stuff. For instance, when he brought up Leaflet, he put words in her mouth that she did not say. Anytime he quoted her, it was out of context. Anytime he tried to present something like why the Trump administration is going after Somali fraud, he wasn't honest. I pointed it out to you that during Tim Walz's reign over Minneapolis, during 2020 to 2022, which, newsflash, is 6 to 4 years ago, that is when the Somali fraud was really going off. That is when the Feeding Our Future scandal was really going hard. And when Uber Goober doesn't mention any of that and instead says that, oh, it's the Gestapo. Well, he actually didn't say Gestapo. No, he just said that he's going in and terrorizing the constituents, which if they can't vote, then they can't be constituents. But I don't know. Maybe it's best to say this. Anytime, and this goes with me, anytime that you are intaking information, that you are listening to someone's opinion, remember, it is an opinion. Be critical. There is no shame in being critical. In fact, it is wiser to be critical and misinterpret someone than it is, well, not like flat out misinterpret, but it is better to be overcritical and overanalyze what someone says than to just intake and believe and to not ask questions. This guy says a bunch of stuff. He uses a bunch of strawmen, uses a bunch of emotional terms because, quite frankly, without strawmen, without emotional, like heartstring tugging, he doesn't really have an argument. His entire argument is, ooh, Trump bad. And because you like Trump, you're bad. It's a dog shit argument. Quite frankly, it is. And you got to watch out for it. There's no real fancy pantsy schmancy way to say it, but Jaxxom is not dumb. He's not the brightest bulb in the box. He's not. But he's bright enough that he sounds convincing, even though what he's saying is nonsense. All that being said, that is my reaction, my response, my beliefs on opinions, whatever you want to call them, on I Made a Huge Mistake by Jaxxom. Once again, don't view brigade, don't like hate mob. That's cringe. Once again, I don't want him to lose his advanced GG sponsorship, because even though I disagree, even though Rev might disagree, even though a lot of people might disagree with what he has to say, he has every right to say it, and he shouldn't lose a livelihood because of what he says, despite what he might believe about people like myself, people like Rev, people he doesn't agree with. But enough of this happy stuff. With all that being said, my name is GoldenEye Hastur. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have made it here after an hour, goodness, I'm sorry. But if you did enjoy, hit the like button. If you didn't enjoy, hit the dislike button. I can't stop you. And if you really disliked it, tell me why in the comments. And if you really liked it, hit the subscribe button and tell me why in the comments. With all that being said, I'm GoldenEye Hastur. Later.